Oh, well, welcome everyone. Glad to see everybody out on a cold, nasty night. I'm just telling you, it is cold and nasty out there. Yeah, it sure is. I'm glad everybody felt the need to be here and come out on a nasty night, that's for sure. I hope everybody's had a good week. The first part of the week was pretty nice for this time of year. That's for sure. I'm going to read over some announcements, and then we'll get into the song service, and then we'll get into Job. Tomorrow, starting tomorrow, isn't it? I think tomorrow morning at 7:30. Is that right? The trip will be the trip is to Arlington National Cemetery. We'll be leaving here. We have one more Wednesday night, and then it's Christmas. The next Wednesday. December the 21st is the program, the Christmas program at Green Hills. Alan and the worship band will be there, and it is at 5:30, I think. 5:30. And it's in the mausoleum on the top of the hill where they do the sunrise service, if anybody's ever been there for it. January the 10th through the 12th is TCTC in Gatlinburg. And then February the 7th is the Tim Tebow Foundation Night to Shine. And then March the 7th and the 8th is the Ignites Men Conference in Lynchburg. Do we have any other announcements? Anybody can? It's coming to the end of the year, but we've already got stuff going on next year, which is a good thing. Okay, we're going to start our song service. We're going to sing some Christmas music tonight. I got in trouble last week, Larry. I'm not going to tell you who, but somebody hit me as soon as we got outside. Why didn't you play any Christmas music? It's Christmas time. She's already chimed in up there. Well, we've got Christmas music tonight. The first one is going to be The First Noel, $9.99. And we're going to sing verses 1 and 4. Okay, and the second song we're going to be singing, and I forgot to welcome everybody that's online. Hi, Betty. I didn't get to see everybody Sunday, so I feel like I'm lost where we went on our trip. But we had a good visit with Emily, and she's doing better. So I hope everything continues to keep going on the better side. But our next song is going to be "O Holy Night," and we're going to sing verses 1 and 3. The number is 1028. 1028, O Holy Night. 1 and 3. Okay, for our prayer song tonight, we're going to sing "O Beautiful Star of Bethlehem," or "Beautiful Star of Bethlehem." That's 1005. 1005. We'll sing verses 1 and 3. And if anybody has any additions to the prayer list, pass them through and Brother Larry will bring them up. 1 and 4. Okay, for our invitation song, it's 903. 903, there's power in the blood. If you want to turn there. And I've got a couple on the, I've got to check a couple on the Facebook. Let's put them on there. The family of Carter Capcock. Okay. Yeah. So it's the family of Carter Capcock. A 13-year-old died of a gunshot in Kansas. He's a friend of Doug and Melinda's grandkids. Janice Hardy is in hospice at home. The family of Velma Thompson. She was one of Ganyo's friends. Very good friend. Ann Dye. She failed today. I think it was today. She's Brother Dolphus Dye's aunt and said that when she failed, she's not doing good. And Terry McCall called in, and Avriana has a fever of 103.5 and tested positive for strep. I got them off the prayer request that popped in. Gay Arn has a stomach bug. Abby and Amelia Van Dyke. Abby has an earache and Amelia has a fever. And that was Sunday. Not sure if, I hope they're feeling better. Lois Deskins has an appointment with cancer doctor this Wednesday. Dwayne Horn is in the hospital with sepsis. Kevin Roberts is in ICU on a ventilator. Mike and Terry Lee both have a stomach issue. Lester Coleman is having back surgery, and pray for his healing, and that's Sister Ada's brother. Jennifer Blankenship is having back surgery also after a fall. Keith Ramey, he tested positive for COVID. Gary Deal, it just says Gary Deal, and it's Sister Sue Bailey's cousin. June Sparks has a doctor appointment this week. And Steve Dye had a stroke. He's a missionary in the Canary Islands. Need to pray for Brother Freddie Blair. I'm sure this time of year is hard on a lot of people. Jackson Chisholm, surgery in the morning. That's Roberta's 7-month-old grandson. And that was on the 9th, so that was Monday. I haven't heard an update. Karen France, it needs prayers. Having a CT scan tomorrow, I guess that was Monday, in Michigan for possible lung problems. That's Sister Tilly's Francis' daughter. Peyton Stiltner has 2 doctor's appointments Friday in Johnson City. Was that last Friday? This Friday. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. MRI. Well, bless her heart. Yeah, pray for little Peyton. She's going to have an MRI, and they'll have to put her to sleep for it. Diane Pierce family, special prayer. Carla, I don't have a last name, just says Carla, special prayers. Yeah, Chris Short and his wife, Jean, they're they're my friends, but they had moved. They used to live in Boston and then moved to Denver, and they've been back here for, I don't know, maybe 8, 10 years now. One of my best friends, his brother, Chris, is the one that I was telling everybody had that stage 4 lung cancer they just found. And his wife, Jean, had a stroke last week, I think. So, and they were both in the hospital. The last time I checked on them, they were both still in the hospital. I'm glad to see Sister Gertrude's here. Said she was homesick. Melanie Yates is having a heart CT on Friday. And just all the widows and widowers that's lost loved ones. Scott Hawks is having knee problems, and Patrick Robertson. And Bertha Haggard is in the hospital walking pneumonia. Okay. Okay, Paul McClanahan's sister. And we've got one on here, Sister Ada. Put it on here. It's Jennifer Blankenship. She was moved to rehab today. She was the one that had the back surgery, I think. It was the knee surgery, back surgery. Okay. Does anybody have anybody else they need to add? Abingdon. And your brother's name, Roger? Cecil. I couldn't remember Cecil. So he's in Abingdon now? Is he in Abingdon Hospital now? From Bristol to Abingdon. Okay, anyone else? Next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. Okay, Brother Doug. Brother Doug's going to have a back procedure next Wednesday. Need to remember him. Doug? Oh, no, I hadn't heard. We'll put Brother Jack King on here. In the hospital. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Brother Josh, would you have a prayer for our prayer list, please?
So many things to be thankful for, Lord. The Lord, as we went through our prayer request, Lord, there's so many names, Lord, that need healing, comfort, peace. Lord, as we look at animal loss, Lord, that Lord, we know that everything
Amen. Okay, we are starting on chapter 8 and 9 in Job. Or not starting, but we're in the chapter 8 and 9. Is where we're at now. And in this lesson, we're going to see how Job is in awe and reverence of God. And he'll explain to us later in the lesson how we can be, or who, I'll put it that way, who is the mediator between us and God. And I think everybody knows that, but he explains it. When times are tough, we often lean on our friends for support and love and understanding. But Job wasn't so fortunate in this manner because of his group of friends. He ended up being criticizing, condemning in lieu of encouragement. Instead of offering a defense to his friends, Job offered up a defense to God. In turn, he revealed that the majestic, holy, all-powerful God that we serve then, that he served then, and that we still serve today. Now, how many of us, and I know we're older, and I'm sure there's a few in here that doesn't know the Peanuts, the cartoon, the classic cartoon, the Peanuts, Charlie Brown, Linus, Snoopy. I grew up watching that, and they always had these holiday things at this time of year. But this is just a little caveat before we get started. Charlie Brown is in his favorite role. He's the pitcher of the Sandlot baseball team. And in this frame, it's showing him pitching, and then it shows him, he's standing out there and he's looking at his teammates. So Charlie Brown says, wow, 9 runs in a row. Good grief. No outs. 9 runs in a row. First 9 guys got to run. So Charlie Brown opens his mouth and begins to wail, what do I do? And here comes Schroeder out, walking out from the mound with his catcher's mask and his chest protector on, with a very philosophy, with his very philosophy answer. This is what he told Charlie Brown. A man is born to suffer as sparks fly upward. And we heard that last week or week before last. Or not last Wednesday or the Wednesday before. And Charlie Brown is just looking at him with a blank look on his face because he doesn't understand. And he said, what did you say, Schroeder? And Linus comes up behind him and said, he's quoting the book of Job, Charlie Brown. It's the 7th verse, the 5th chapter. Linus continues, actually the problem of suffering is a very profound one. But before he can get another word out, he's interrupted by Lucy. She said, if a person has bad luck, it's just because they've done something wrong. That's what I say. Schroeder moves back into a little cluster of people surrounding Charlie Brown, and that's what Job's friends told him, but I doubt it. By this time, the whole team had gathered around Charlie Brown on the pitcher's mound, including Snoopy. Disgustedly, Charlie Brown looks around at his baseball team, and he says, I don't have a baseball team. I have a theological seminary, which is a Bible study. Instead of them playing baseball, they were all quoting the Bible. The study of the book of Job is kind of like going to a seminary because it's not so much about Job as it's about God. The theology is by its own very definition the study of God. We have already met Eliphaz. He's the oldest, most sophisticated of Job's friends. And now we're about to meet Bildad. Bildad is that guy that I told y'all about. He's the smallest guy in the Bible. He's a shoe height. He's generally considered one of the most hurtful and least comforting of Job's friends. Bildad is a cold, intellectual thinker, hard-nosed debater. He sees all of his issues are in black and white and prides himself on the straightforward, no-nonsense approach to his life. He is the kind of person whose mind is already made up, not only when it's a very important issue, but on some unimportant issues as well. Bildad is listened to Eliphaz's words and Job's response, and he can't wait to weigh in with his no-nonsense advice. So in chapter 8, we're going to see what Bildad's investigation of Job, because he knows what's wrong with Job. And in the 9th chapter, we'll see what Job's response back to his friend's attack is. So, as chapter 8 begins, we see Bildad the Shuhite relating his biased opinion to Job's current situation in verses 1 through 7. And Bildad, he starts off with his first, he's insulting Job's character. Bildad begins, and it's in chapter 2, or verse 2. Bildad begins his comments with this insult in verse 2. How long will you speak these things? And the words of your mouth be like a strong wind. And this is, in the Old Testament, equivalent to calling somebody a windbag. So you can imagine the counselor saying to someone suffering individual who wants to die, Bildad did, and in fact, he used the same approach with Job in his next speech in Job 18:2. So they're really pouring salt in Job's wounds. He's looking for somebody to give him a little bit of love and a little bit of compassion, but his friends keep pounding him down and telling him that everything is his fault. And that goes back to where you're not supposed to judge anyone because you do not know the circumstances. Because everybody was trying to judge Job and tell him what he was doing wrong, and we know it was a challenge between God and Satan. And he did nothing wrong. But Bildad begins his comments with this insult in verse 2. And I put it up there, yeah. How long will you speak these things, and the words of your mouth be like a strong wind? Oh, I just read that, I'm sorry. Can you imagine a counselor saying that to a suffering individual? Job had poured out his grief and was waiting to hear some sympathetic word, but his friends keep just pounding him down. But his friend said that Job's speech was just a bunch of hot air. Bildad had no compassion whatsoever. He began his attack on Job's character. And the second part of Bildad's speech to Job, he starts indicting Job's children. Bildad follows up in verse 3 and 4, 8, 3 and 4. Does God subvert judgment, or does the Almighty pervert justice? If your sons have sinned against him, he has chastised them away for their transgressions. So now Bildad is blaming his kids, his sons, on them being killed. And that was one of the things that happened to Job, one of the first things that happened to him after he lost his fortune. It must have pained Job deeply when Bildad said that Job's children had died because they had sinned. Job loved his children, prayed for them regularly. He offered up a sacrifice for all 10 of his children every time they got together, just in case they unintentionally sinned. And they never presented, in the book, they were never presented as an evildoer or rebellious children. In a warped, perverse way, Bildad probably thought he was encouraging Job by insulting that perhaps they were not killed because of Job's sins, but because of their own sins. But this surely bore no grief to the father who had seen 10 graves dug for his children. The third thing that Bildad did, after insulting Job's character and indicting his children, Bildad insists in verses 5 and 6 that Job needs to confess his hidden sin. See, everybody thinks that Job's got a hidden sin that nobody knows about. And that's the reason he's being punished the way he's being punished, but we know the true story. He says, if you would earnestly seek God and make your supplication to the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would awake for you and prosper your rightful dwelling place. It's obvious that Bildad had listened to Job's speech recorded in chapters 6 and 7. He had heard Job arguing with God. That angered him that Job would even think that God would do anything wrong. Isn't he the holy God? And doesn't his very nature demand that he do what is right? How dare Job blaspheme God by accusing him of wrongdoing? Bildad's appeal is just another echo of Satan's philosophy to dishonor God. And of course, what Bildad is ignoring during his speech is that Job is in a deep throes of depression. If you are going to be a counselor, don't use Bildad as an example. He's not trying to make things better for Job. He's assuming. This is the assumptions in the past. It's always dangerous to make assumptions. And Bildad falls into this trap concerning his friend. Consider his words in verses 8 through 10. For inquire, please, of the former age, and consider the things discovered by their fathers. For we are born yesterday and know nothing, because our days on earth are a shadow. We will not teach you and tell you, and utter words from their heart. Bildad is a traditionalist who looked for wisdom in the past to be sure he can learn from the past. It was George Santayana who said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to relive the past. But the past must be a rudder to guide us, not an anchor to hold us back. In fact, that something was said or written years ago to guarantee that right. A tradition and traditionalism are two different things. A tradition is the living faith of the dead. Traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. There is nothing wrong with a sense of tradition, but traditionalism means that you're always living in the past. To Bildad, the past was a parking lot. However, God wants the past to be a launching pad. Bildad respected the wisdom of the ancients more than he did the teaching of the contemporaries. He didn't think anybody who was born recently had anything good to say about anything. So he encouraged Job to go back and live in the past. Now this next, I'm going to go ahead and put it up. This next group of verses, it's 11 through 13. And Bildad is trying to explain to Job by using nature to explain to him how and why what's happening to him is happening. Can the papyrus grow without a marsh? Can the reeds flourish without water? While it is yet green and not cut down, it withers before any other plant. So are the paths that we all who forget God and hope that the hypocrite shall perish. Bildad may have summarized some of these sayings of the ancient as he argued from the law of the cause and effect. This is a law that applies to nature. His reasons that are surely applied to him in human life as well. The papyrus plant is his first example. If it doesn't have water, it withers and dies. Job was withering and dying, so there had to be a cause. He was a hypocrite, and his hope was perishing. From the illustration of the plants, Bildad then moves to spiders. Can you lean on a spider's web and be held up securely? Of course not. No matter how confident you may be, the web will break. Job's confidence was like that. It would soon break and he would fall. Finally, the third example comes from the garden. If you pull up a plant, no matter what kind of a plant it may be, it will eventually die. Likewise, if something happens to Job's root system and he is fading away. There was some cause, and Bildad's reasons that is sin is the cause. No one pulls up a good plant and destroys it so that they had something so there had to be something wrong with Job for God to uproot him. God doesn't cultivate weeds and cast away good plants. All these arguments presented by Bildad are the sound of logic. However, they do not apply to Job and couldn't be further from the real truth. Have you ever had someone come to supposedly help you and then they just tear you to pieces? And then they leave, and almost as an aside, they throw a small caveat that is nice so that you will feel better as they're leaving the conversation. Well, that's what Bildad is going to do. He has a moment of regret and decides to throw something positive before finishing speaking. So here are the three caveats that he offered up to ease the pain of his poisoned words. Number one, God will deliver you. Verse 20. Behold, God Behold, God will not cast away the blameless, nor will he uphold the evildoers. This is Bildad's way of telling Job to hang in there. It would have to be really nice for him to have started the conversation with these words instead of his indictments against Job. Number two, God will delight you. And it's in verse 21. We will yet fill your mouth with laughing and your lips with rejoicing. In this current state, the days of delight and laughter seem far away from Job. Job is probably longing for the days when his companions sat with him in silence, for even their encouraging words have little meaning for him in his current state. And number three, finally, those who hate you will be clothed with shame. Those who hate you will be clothed with shame, and the dwelling place of the wicked will come to nothing. Those comments don't seem sincere at all. They seem to be merely uttered by Bildad to ease his own conscience for being such a mean-spirited person. All of Bildad's many words, both harsh and unnaturally kind, sound like static in Job's ears. His words are distorting the truth, discouraging Job, so that Bildad's entry into Job's life, that was his package of encouragement. So Bildad did not help Job at all in trying to make him feel better or trying to show him any kind of compassion or love. So now we're getting ready to go into Job in the 9th chapter. In the 9th chapter, Job's going to do his response, but in an interesting way. He doesn't do so much respond to Bildad as he does to God. Job feels like his only hope is somehow appeal to his situation before the court of heaven and prove his innocence before the Almighty. In order to understand this chapter, we need to see the motivation behind Job's question. If you can carefully read the entire chapter, you will find out there's many legal words in it. Terms like dispute, argue, judge, innocent, summons, hearing, justice, guilty and blameless. When Job inquires about righteousness, he's not talking about salvation. He's talking about his vindication. He wants to know how he can be declared innocent, and he uses legal terminology to express that desire. If a man tried to take God to court, he would not be able to answer God's questions because God is so awesome that no one could contend with him. In these statements here, Job displays his incredible respect for his Maker. But we know that Job doesn't know that God has already weighed in on it. God already knows what's going on. He hasn't seen fit to tell Job about it yet. Remember, Job's experiencing all this without the knowledge of God's conversation with Satan. So he has come to the conclusion that his only hope is to get an audience with God. Now we're getting ready to see the respect that Job has for God. Even though what he's going through in his own life, this is the respect that Job has for God. We're going to now go through and examine one of the greatest passages of praise and worship in the Bible. For here, Job powerfully exhorts the attributes of God in rapid fire fashion. I'm not going to read it that fast, but I want everybody to get it, to get the words and to understand. There are 6 statements about God that demonstrates that he is in total awe of his Creator. Number 1 is God is incomprehensible. It's in verses 3 and 4. 9, 3, and 4. Declare that there is no one who could ever contend and answer God because he is wise in heart. Job realizes that God is far beyond anything that he could ever wrap his head around. The infinite cannot grasp the infinite. Number 2, God is invincible. Verse 4 states that God is mighty in strength. No one can compare to the power of God, not Satan nor any angel, and surely not any mortal man. Number 3, God is invulnerable. This is in verse 4, the last part of verse 4. Who has hardened himself against him and prospered. Going up against God, God is losing every time. There is no winning against the Almighty. Number 4 is God is incredible. This is in verse 10. In verse 10 declares that he does great things past finding out. Yes, wonders without number. This verse refers to all the wonders that he had in his control and described the verses in 5 through 9. He controls and describes in verses 5 through 9. This is in verse 6. Says that God shakes the earth out of its place. In verse 7, it states that he commands the sun and all the motions in the universe. The picture here is immense. God is sovereign over all of the massive things. Verse 8 then says that God treads on the waves of the sea. He is all-powerful. Nothing is all-powerful over everything because he created everything. There is nothing greater than God. Number 5, God is invisible. This is in verse 11. It says that if God goes by me, I do not see him. We can see the works of God, but we cannot see or perceive him. He is invisible to us. Number 6, this is 9:12. And the verse 12 concludes by asking, if he takes away, who can hinder him? God cannot be stopped. He cannot be questioned or restrained. He is omniscient, omnipresent, and irresistible. Job has an awesome concept of God in heaven. Would that we could have such an appreciation for God as Job had. Job has an incredible respect for God, but it is without his respect for God that he feels such hopelessness at this point. How could someone ever deal with such a God? In the next few words, we can see the sense of his feeling and despair that Job has when he's thinking about his options or resolving his conflicts in his life. So in the response to the 6 statements he had made concerning God's character, Job offers up 7 reasons he feels that God is untouchable and his conflicts are irresolvable. Number 1, he could not dispute with God. This is in 9, 14, and 15. How then can I answer him and choose my words to reason with him? For though I were righteous, I could not answer him. I would beg mercy of my judge. Job realizes that he has nothing to say, even in the position of righteousness. What can one man utter to the holy God? Nothing. Number 2, he could not deal with God. In verse 16, if I called and he answered me, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice. God is so awesome that if he really did answer his call, Job wouldn't even have believed it. Why would God stoop and answer such a man? Number 3, he could not direct God. That's in verse 19. If it is a matter of strength, indeed, he is strong. And if out of justice, who will appoint my day in court? Who would invite God into a courtroom? Who would put Job on God's calendar? God cannot be told what to do. Number 4, he could not depend upon God. This is in verse 24. This displays the depths of how far Job had fallen. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it is not he, who else could it be? Look at this last statement. If God is not causing all these things, then who else could it be? Job knew that God has sovereignty over everything. And even though he was innocent, Job knew that he could not prove it before God. His emotional state was now so unraveled that he no longer had believed that he could count on God to be fair with him, even if he did get his day in court. Number 5, could he not delay God? In verse 9:25, Job says that the days are swifter than a runner. They may flee away. They may see no good. Job figures that even if he cannot get to God, it will take some time. And by that time, he assumes that he would already be gone. Number 6, he could not deceive God. Job even knows the radical approach shown in verse 27 won't work. Now I have to read it. If I say, I will forget my complaint, I will put off my sad face and wear a smile. God would see right through it. You cannot spin circumstances to fool God. He cannot be deceived. And number 7, this is the last one of Job's points. He could not detain God. Job knows that even if he were able to wash himself with snow water, God would still find him unclean and would still condemn him. And and isn't that the truth? We don't have anything that we can offer God. Job accepts the fact that he cannot or he can't get to God in his own strength. So this is what his resolution about this is. Job acknowledged God's greatness, and it is in the very greatness that makes him feel as if in this situation of hopelessness, if only there was someone, somewhere, who could represent him before God. At this time in his struggle, such a mediator has all that Job could hope for. Here then was Job crying out to someone that could stand in his help him between God and himself, to create a way of meeting the possibility of that contact. When Job cried out to God, when Job cried out that God was not like a man, it was in verse 32. His words were true, but they are no longer true. Now remember, this is in the Old Testament. And he's saying that God is not like man. There was a day when God became man in order that he might bridge the gap between Job so painfully described. This is when we can see how Job is describing how he can get to God, but he needs a man to bridge the gap between God and us. When God sent his only son, Jesus, into the world to be one of us, he did so in order that it might be possible for there to be a mediator between God and man. Since Jesus Christ was fully God, he could reach his hand out to his Father in heaven. And because he was fully man, he could reach his hand down to his other hand down to us. This is truly the gospel in the Old Testament. Here the thought of a mediator between man and God is born. And we can see that the story through the lens of the Gospels. And we know that the thread of the salvation that runs through the entire Word of God is here in Job chapter 9. God has made the way for us to come together. And that's what I wanted you guys to see. And remember that part. Because I'm going to read it again. Since Jesus Christ was fully God, he could reach his hand to the Father in heaven. And because he was fully man, he could reach his other hand down to us. That's how he is the mediator between man and God. That's how he saves us. That's how he protects us. That's how we get to heaven. If we didn't have that mediator, I don't know if we could, I would be like Job. I'd be worried that God may not have time for me, but we have the mediator now that can take care of that for us. And that's the end of chapter 9. And we're going to, I think it's chapter 10 through 12 next Wednesday night. We'll start back on it then. But I think we're going to miss, I think the Christmas, or the Wednesday of Christmas Eve. Is it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Christmas Day. Brother Allen's going to do the message, and I think it's just going to be on Facebook, as far as I know right now. He's going to do a Christmas message on that day. And then I'll be back the next Wednesday night, and we'll get back on Job. I know this one, I read it and listened to it and read it and listened to it. It's a little, to me, it was a little confusing, but I wanted y'all to get this last little bit because it really helped bring everything together. It's hard when you're reading and looking and seeing, and especially the Job's friends, how he is being tore apart. He's already tore apart, but his friends sure are making it a lot harder than it, they could make it a lot easier on him, for sure. But we just need to remember that we have a mediator. We have someone that can put one hand to God and one hand to us, and that's Jesus. And this time of invitation, we're going to stand and we're going to sing our invitation song. There's power in the blood, and I think it is 9:05. 903. 903 if you want to turn to it. If anyone's here that's not in the family of God, please come forward and we will take care of that problem now. You just need to believe, repent, confess to men, and be baptized, and then you'll have that mediator for yourself. So we will sing verses 1 and 4 of 903. I'd like to thank everybody for your patience and your attention, kind attention, for sure. I'm going to read over the announcements really quick. The trip to Arlington's in the morning. We should have added that to our prayer list. We will. Just everybody remember the trip in the morning, going to Washington. As far as I know, I think the weather's going to be okay if it doesn't do anything else. What I watched earlier today, it's not supposed to snow that much more. It'll be cold in the morning, and the rest of the weekend's better than today. December the 18th and the 20th is Feed the Families event here at the church. December the 21st is the Christmas program at Green Hills, and that's at 5:30 at the Mausoleum on top. January the 10th to the 12th is TCTC in Gatlinburg. February the 7th, Tim Tebow Foundation Night to Shine. And March the 7th and 8th is the Ignite Men Conference in Lynchburg. Does anybody have any other announcements? Okay, Brother Larry, would you mind to dismiss us, please?